From the land of conjurers flying through the internet to your device like a UAP, hauntingly unexplained and downright weird, this is the witching hours, and we are ready to take off in the flash of an eye. Good evening to one and all, wherever and whenever you are listening to this program. I am China the Frost, and joining me, as always, is the medium Jenny Lee. You ready to get weird, medium Jenny Lee?
Of course.
Well,
Every
here we
minute
are
is
again.
weird.
Yeah, it's been that adjustment period right now. There's been an adjustment period from the summer into for us, which is our fall. So
Yes.
things have been a little hectic, and we're getting used to what this new normal is until that all changes up again. Things
Yeah.
don't stay the same for very long around here. So
No.
it is wonderful to see everyone hanging out in chat tonight. Welcome in,
Keisha's
welcome in.
gift and subs over there.
Yeah, thank you, Keisha Mama, for the resub and for the gift subs. There's a whole bunch of them. Holy smokes! So we're 25% way to a goal that we made at some point in time. So
Ooh,
excellent.
nice.
Thank you so much, Keisha. We appreciate
Very
it.
nice. Very nice.
And so that's one thing that you can always check us out. Subs are nice. Another thing that you can do that really helps us out is to go over to YouTube and click that subscribe button.
We're like 3 away from our goal that we made in August.
Our goal was to hit 200 by September 1st. Now we've passed that goal by a very small amount, but we're only 3 away. So we pretty much got there. It was for me, it was just a goal I was trying to hit. It was not a failure. We got really, really close.
So close.
So I have the live count up, and we can check throughout the night. If you are not subbed over on the YouTube, the Witching Hours podcast is how you find it. Go click the sub button for us. And if you're watching the video on YouTube or checking out later, click. You hear it all the time. I don't know how many of these I sit through because I go through so many YouTube rabbit holes. But clicking the like button is definitely helps us out. And if you're listening to us later in another time, in another place over there on Spotify or iHeartRadio or iTunes, wherever you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, if you can, leave us a review over there, like it, whatever you can do, and help other people find all these conversations we have with all these wonderful people.
Amazing people. We always have one.
And you can also check us out at the witchinghourspodcast.com. The witchinghourspodcast.com has a list of all of our upcoming guests. As soon as we have them booked, we throw them over there on the website with a short description of what we are hoped to be discussing. You can also find the merch store there, and you can get all your want to get weird merchandise. So make sure you go check that out. Anyway, you ready to?
Yeah. What's the news this week?
Ready to get into the news.
Yep.
What happened?
Mercury retrograde is over.
Somehow my news button went away. The wrong one again.
There we go. That was the right one.
There we go. We got it. Now we're ready for the news. Okay. News. First story tonight. Asteroid will strike Earth later today. Astronomers say, but it should be fine.
Who said? Who said it?
Astronomers said this. And I should mention,
right? Wasn't it going to hit near the Philippines?
Yeah,
what happened?
Yeah, over the
know?
Yeah, so this was yesterday's article. So everybody knows is the Earth isn't ending tonight.
Yeah.
If it would have happened, it would have happened last night.
Okay.
But I thought it was an important story because it brings up kind of an important fact that people should know. The Earth will be hit by a tiny asteroid yesterday, astronomers have said. But the tiny asteroid, which is roughly 1 meter in size, will burn up in the atmosphere as it arrives. That means it should pose no risk to anyone on the ground, but it should provide them with a show. Essentially, it's going to look like a fireball through the sky.
Okay.
And it's going to land over the Western Pacific, which there was a storm out there. So they were saying that the hurricane in the Pacific might make it where no one could have seen it anyway.
Okay.
But I thought this was an interesting story because it said, if I can find this part in the story, it's just the 9th time that we spotted an asteroid before it hit Earth.
Oh, really? Well, we're not too
So
good at
out of
that then, are we?
yeah, so for all those fireballs that we are constantly getting
This is the
videos of,
ninth
that
time?
people
Mm,
wonder if that was a UFO or,
yeah,
oftentimes they just know that it was an asteroid. This is only the 9th time that it was identified before it hit. So, uh, I guess I meant for
weird.
that not to be scary, but it kinda is. Like, we really have no clue what's coming at us.
Those
Um,
those astronomers need to get their shit together.
yeah, they're working on it. They're working on it. Story number 2, confused robo-taxis gather in droves to honk at each other all night. This was saved by our good friend, the CMC Air Boss, over on our Discord, which you can click on all our
Oh,
links
good
and find
lord.
our Discord. Waymo, a subsidiary of Google, has been a leader in self-driving technology over the last 15 years. Last month,
Mhm.
it hit a milestone by opening its robo-taxi service to everyone in San Francisco. Uh, and before that, you had to be waitlisted, but now anybody can order a Waymo.
Apparently
So,
somebody ordered all of them. Is that what
yeah,
happened?
yeah. Well, all eyes are on Waymo, and apparently all ears are too. Beyond all the honking, of course, there's also plenty of backup beeping and flashing lights. The
Mm.
robo taxis appear to have taken over the lot right after Waymo's expanded rollout, and while they may be capable navigators on the streets, they have yet to master parking. After debuting rides to the entire public, Waymo robotaxis in San Francisco have started honking excessively too, except they're not doing it on the streets, but while trying to navigate the complicated terrain that is a local parking lot.
Us too, Waymo, us too.
They go on to interview someone who's living in that neighborhood. He said at first, I actually found it really funny that these cars are honking each other, driving around in circles. But after keeping him up all night, he says he
It
doesn't
wasn't
find it
funny anymore.
funny anymore.
I mean, parking's no joke, people. That's some
Yeah,
serious business.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. We got to get there.
We
They're
can't
working on it.
we can't see asteroids, nor can we park, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably find lots of real people who are driving around in circles honking in the parking lot. So, I don't know if it's a step down necessarily.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Story number 3. For the first time in 1 billion years, 2
Mm.
life forms truly merged into one organism.
CMC shared this one too, I believe.
Yeah, evolution is quite a wondrous and lengthy process with some random bursts of activity that are responsible for the diversity of life on our planet today. These can happen on large scales, like with evolution of more efficient limbs. They also occur at a microscopic cellular level, such as when the different parts of the cell were first formed. Now, a team of scientists have detected a sign of a major life event that has likely not occurred for at least 1 billion years.
Hmm.
They observed primary endosymbiosis. See, I can say that, but not
You can say that, but
astronomer.
you can't say astronomer.
Uh, 2 life forms merging into one organism. This incredibly rare event occurred between a type of abundant marine algae and a bacterium. It was observed in a lab setting. For perspective, plants first began to dot our planet the last time that this happened. The results are described in 2 papers recently published in the journals Cell and Science.
Hmm.
In the paper published in Cell, a team of scientists showed that this process is occurring yet again. They looked at a species of algae called Brarudosphera bigelowi. The algae
Mhm.
engulfed a cyanobacterium, gives it a bit of a plant superpower. It can fix nitrogen straight from the air and combine it with other elements to form more useful compounds. This is something that plants can't normally do.
That's neat.
So,
Here's my
yeah.
question though.
Mhm.
How do we know that that hasn't happened in the last billion years? We've been only looking at stuff for a little bit of time.
Well, I guess I would say fossil records,
I
and
guess.
you know,
Yeah.
like we have records of plant life and
Yeah.
algae, and
But there's like the majority of the ocean we don't know anything about. So
Mhm.
I just, like most things, I think we should say that we know of.
Yeah, yeah, an
This is the
asterisk.
first time this has happened in a billion years that we know of, because we don't know a
Yeah,
lot. Yeah.
yeah. Like what happened? What about 900 million years ago? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, But either way, significant.
Yeah, it's a cool
And
story.
that's always something that I have questions about too. Because I definitely kind of see like the macro evolution, like you can see that through the fossil record, but like
Mhm.
it's really hard
Yeah.
to see like the micro evolution.
Mhm.
I'm not saying like I don't believe in that. It's just it's been harder for me to understand, especially since taking anthropology and studying history.
Mhm.
Like you don't see major uh major differences in early anatomical humans than you do with humans now. So like we're
Yeah.
I don't know. It
Yeah,
gets complicated.
it
But
does.
anyway, that's that story. The fourth story for tonight is sunspots surge to a 23-year high as solar maximum continues to intensify so far beyond initial expectations.
Mm.
The average number of visible dark patches on the sun's surface in August was higher than any other month since September 2001. The final count was more than twice as high as experts initially predicted it would be. The
Wow.
number of sunspots peaked on August 8th, went up to 337 sunspots were observed on the sun, which is the highest total in a 24-hour period since March 2001.
Mm.
These numbers indicate what some scientists have already suspected, that we have entered solar maximum. However, we can't be certain of this until long after sunspot numbers begin to drop again.
Yep. Sun's doing lots of crazy stuff.
Yeah. And going back to our robo driving cars, our last story for tonight is lucid dreamers drove virtual cars while asleep in incredible experiment.
Oh.
So connecting our dream worlds to our conscious realities might be entirely possible according to emerging research. A new study by 3 researchers from the US neurotechnology company, REM Space, has shown with a bit of training, some of us might be able to react and respond to devices around us while we are lucidly dreaming.
Hmm.
Lucid dreaming has the ability to recognize you are in a dream while you are in it. It's a trainable skill, although about half the population has experienced the phenomena spontaneously. I'm telling you. I'm just just to let you guys know, I usually talk a little bit better than this. I'm teaching 4 classes a day right now,
Yeah.
and
Your
I'm a
brain's
lecture
fried.
heavy guy.
Mhm.
So, like, my mouth muscles are I think they're
They're burned out.
First verified by scientists in 1975, lucid dreaming has intrigued researchers ever since. One of its most fascinating possibilities has now been put to the test. In a rudimentary experiment, 5 practiced lucid dreamers were able to control the movements of a virtual avatar from their dream state in reaction
Wow.
to LED triggers shown through their closed eyelids.
Maybe they
So
were the ones driving the Waymos.
maybe so, honking at each other in their in their
They're
lucid
lucid
dreams.
dreamers. No, that's cool.
Yeah. So that was the news.
News.
And now I have to I'm going to have to present here, I think. Um
Yes, we have Priestess of Wonderland's moon update for the month of September. She's not able to
yeah.
join us live today because she is out and about gallivanting across the country to go do fun stuff. So we will be watching a video that she's made for us.
So, first thing we can do here is
Oh, she's here. Speak of the devil.
oh, there we go.
Speak of the priestess. There she is.
So there we go. We're able to share the first one
Oh my
here. We hit
god.
200.
What?
So we
Thanks,
hit 200
guys.
live on there. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you, everyone, for all of your wonderful help in
Yay.
achieving yet another goal.
It. Woo.
All right. And we're going to do this again.
I hope that September's moon stuff is better than August.
All right. Let's see what Alyson, the Priestess of Wonderland, has to say for our September moon update.
Hello, everybody. So sorry that I couldn't be there with you live today. Hopefully, I'm hanging out in the chat.
You
I will
are?
sure if I would have Wi-Fi while I was traveling. So I hope everybody survived August and all of the craziness that went on in August. So we're starting off September. We are through with Mercury retrograde, thank goodness.
Woo!
Already had our Virgo new moon. So I want to talk a little bit about that because this Virgo moon cycle is kicking off eclipse season or the fall eclipse season. So even though it's a regular new moon, being in the sign of Virgo, which helps us to prepare for things, I think is really significant to help us get ready for not just fall, but also for eclipse season. So our full moon eclipse is going to be in Pisces on September 17th, and Pisces and Virgo are opposite energies. So Virgo is the earth sign, the virgin, the focus on the self, the practicing and perfecting your skills, practicing and perfecting being a better person. Like Virgo is very much about embodying your whole self, and Pisces is navigating the opposite of earth. It's navigating dreams and the subconscious and that under those things that are under the surface. And the reason we have these two energies that balance each other out is because the things that we discover and uncover in the subconscious are things that will help us bring that into being, embody that it helps us to discover who we truly are, who we truly are on a whole level, which is what Virgo's goal is, to be a whole self. And that involves the things that are beneath the surface as well. So this first week that we're currently in right now, Virgo was the big event this week to help us kind of get organized, like taking inventory of your life and figuring out like how you want to close out the rest of this year, how you want to go into fall, what you're going to be kind of unearthing and what you're kind of going to be releasing during the fall, because the fall season is about like shedding our leaves and letting go. Winter is about hibernating and going deep within. So we're kind of just getting ready for this transition of season. The other big thing that happened this week is Mars entered Cancer, and this can be like very moody and grumpy. Like Cancer is emotional, and
That's
Mars
what's
is
going on.
in conflict, so it can be kind of grumpy energy, but it's also about taking action in a Cancerian way, which is self-care, or taking care of others, taking care of the people in your life, taking care of yourself. So I think that this is very significant because in November, Mars is moving into Leo, and then it will retrograde in December. And then Mars is going to be in Leo for the first half of 2025, which I think is very significant. So this again feels like a preparation of like, how can you remember to practice self-care and take care of yourself in regards to how you're taking action. Or Mars in Leo is all fiery and like ready to go. We're going to like remember these things that we put in place, that the Virgo new moon put in place, that the Virgo season put in place, because Virgo is also the like daily routines, thing, service and practice, and the things that you like regularly do to maintain. And Cancer, it helps us to like nurture those things. So I think like this month and this season is going to be kind of preparing us for fall, preparing us for Mars retrograde, preparing us for the rest of this year. There's just this very much a preparation feeling for this month. So the following week, not much is happening. We've got our first quarter Sagittarius moon. I feel like the first quarter moons is when we really start to feel our energy pick up, because there's the moon is 50% lit, so we have lots of light and lots of energy. A Sagittarius first quarter moon is also very motivating and inspiring, because Sagittarius is like ready. Okay, yeah, let's do this. Let's go on this adventure. Let's go explore this thing. Let's learn something new. So the first quarter Sagittarius moon has a feeling of being like very motivating, and that's leading us up to the full moon in Pisces, which is also a lunar eclipse. And speaking of full moon in Pisces, is going to illuminate something that is on a subconscious level. Having it be a lunar eclipse, I feel like it's something that's not kind of like close to the surface. It might be something that's like a little bit deeper, finding those desires that are deep within and bringing those to the surface. Lunar eclipses, I kind of have the feeling of like allowing your eyes to adjust if somebody were to like cut the lights out, or like when you when you walk outside into the dark night compared to like being inside. It takes you a while. Like at first you can't see anything. Everything is dark, but the longer you sit in that darkness, the longer you allow your eyes to adjust and focus. Eventually you can start to see forms, and the longer you're out there, you're able to probably see a lot more clearly than usual. So having a full moon that's usually like illuminating your whole backyard, having it be blocked out all of a sudden, it allows you to sit in that darkness, sit in that quiet, and see what eventually will illuminate. And Pisces is delusional, and it's dreamy, and you're not really sure like what's real and what isn't. So like the things that like come up for you during that darkness will eventually be re-illuminated again, like after the earth passes over the moon, we're like re-illuminated. So like what you were looking at, what your eyes adjusted on and thought was there might not be, it might be something totally different. So we do want to worry about illusion with Pisces energy, but it's just a really interesting moon to kind of like, it'd be a good moon to like meditate with and to just see what comes up for you, see what surfaces. And then at the end of the week, September 22nd, the sun is moving into Libra. We're leaving Virgo season, entering Libra season, and Venus is moving into Scorpio, which is going to put us into this like spookier fall vibe. Venus and Scorpio is very, very sensual as well. And then the sun being in Libra, Libra is ruled by Venus. So I think the end of this month is going to have some very Venusian kind of themes. So how I look at like the transition from Virgo to Libra is like Virgo like maps out the plan, gets the list, makes everything like organized, and then Libra kind of takes care of like whatever's left over, the extra stuff, the stuff that you forgot, the stuff that you've neglected. Virgo might pile up one side of your scales with all of these to-dos, like all of these things, and then Libra's like, well, wait, let's like balance this out a little bit and make things a little bit more practical. Libra is kind of one of those things that can handle any situation. So depending on what situation or what's going on in your life at this time, going to help you better understand how you might be able to balance out your scales. But it's really just about like letting things settle. Libra lets things settle, and especially after Virgo just kind of takes things down a notch and say like, okay, let's be real about this. What is manageable? What's doable? How are we actually going to approach these things? And Libra is kind of the breath of fresh air that comes in and is like, okay, let's make this happen, but let's make this manageable and doable. And also helps to like think about things practically with the air element. Then the last week of September, Mercury's also moving into Libra. So Mercury's been in Virgo all through that retrograde that we had last month, and now is moving into Libra again to hopefully like clean up. So it's like coming in after the chaos and like cleaning everything up, like sweeping all of that energy out, clearing it all out, and like balancing your scales. So that is the moon for September. A little bit more manageable, I think, than August was, but I do think that the full moon eclipse is certainly going to bring something up for everybody. And I don't know, I like the way it feels. I like the way it feels. I like all the Venus energy at the end of the month, because I just think that we could all use some more love in our life. So why not throw a bunch of Libra and Venus and Scorpio in there? So thank you so much for letting me share this video with you. Sorry again that I wasn't able to be there. Hopefully I can be there next month. I hope you guys have a good rest of the show tonight, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Alyson.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alyson. Yeah.
Ooh. Eclipse season. Ooh, yikes.
Well, I just want to say, going off last month, I had all the normies. I don't know if that's what we call them now. At work, were coming up and saying things like, "What in the heck's been going on? Why has everything been so crazy?" I actually said it today, and everybody looked at me like I was crazy. I was like, "Well, we're just coming out of Mercury being in Gatorade," and they were like, "What?" And I was like, well, the technology, because they're like, the internet's been going down every day, and this program isn't working, and they have all these new programs we're supposed to be doing, and none of them are working, and what the heck's going on, and why isn't they working? And I was like, it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better, because Priestess gave us the update, so I know that. And
All
I'm
right,
actually
Frosty.
I'm actually looking forward to the end of the month, because that too has already been that way for September already for me is like a lot. And I'm
Mhm.
ready for whatever we said, the Virgo is coming around to figure
Yeah.
out to do
The
what you
Libra.
can do.
Libra's coming out
Libra.
after. Mhm.
So that's what
Clean it up.
I'm already looking forward to that. So thank you so much,
Yes, thank
Alyson,
you,
for that update. And
Alyson. All right, who's our guest tonight,
all
Frosty?
right, let's go. Ivy combines a unique skill set to create positive outcomes for clients. She has combined project management and magic to create practical magic project management, or PMPM, so that her clients can make the most out of their lives and future. Ivy is also the author of the Cancer Grimoire, created from her cancer diagnosis. It explores the healing potential of integrating Western medicine with materialist healing practices through an enchanted perspective. Please welcome to the show, Ivy Bromius. Welcome. Let me get you in here at the stage. Welcome to the show, Ivy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for the lovely introduction.
Well, as we
Welcome
said
in.
before, we've been very excited about having you on. There's a lot to talk about. I guess, well, there's a couple things we've never been able to talk. We haven't been able to talk about on the show that I've been interested before, and one is kind of the business side to some of the things you do with like the project management and how you kind of combine that with magic. Could you give us a little bit of background on how you kind of got started with that?
Yeah, so I've been doing magic since I was a teenager, which is 5 years now. No, it's actually a really long time. And in addition, I also have a career as a project manager, professional project manager. And it occurred to me, that both of those combine kind of in a really effective and good way. So the skills of project management make your magic better. And then, of course, the skills of magic make your projects better. And it's kind of this kind of like virtuous cycle of getting shit done, basically. And so I've been using these tools myself for a long time, and then finally sort of started to sort of blog about them and share them. And now I consult with people on it. So I think that it's a way of kind of stealing these tools from kind of the corporate world. Like you Robin Hood them, you steal them, and then you use them to like do awesome stuff for yourself and your community.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and I'm kind of curious. This kind of goes on a topic of things that we talked about before when we talk about psychics, and I always tell people, you might be surprised how many three-letter alphabet organizations work with psychics and mediums and dealing in this world of spirituality and magic and stuff like that. How common is it for businesses and stuff to seek out people in this world to kind of help them with their business forecasts and stuff like that?
So on a purely sort of mundane looking level, project management is kind of sort of a huge industry and career field. Companies will spend money hiring people to get the team's shit together. Basically, I work with really smart people, way smarter than me, technical people, and I help them figure out priorities and help them stay on track and do all of that. And so that's a really sort of a benefit that I give my company. And I happen to like my company, right? And so it works out really well for me. At the same time, I've been learning all these skills that are absolutely useful for tiny businesses, but also just for individuals, right? A lot of the stuff I know translates really well to like you and your goal. Right. So it doesn't have to be a corporate thing. It doesn't have to be millions of dollars. It doesn't have to be a huge team. It can just be really cool techniques and tools to keep yourself on track so that you're working toward your own personal sort of best future and future goals.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, because I think everyone tends to be goal oriented, or at least should try to be goal oriented, but sometimes it's difficult to kind of keep those, to figure out exactly what that looks like and to figure out exactly, where you should be working. You got anything you want to ask about the project manager? I know we've talked about that a little bit before, Jenny.
Well, I was looking at your website and I saw that one of the ways that you help using the magic part is through tarot. So I was wondering kind of how that comes into play when you're working with someone trying to help them figure it out.
So I've been reading tarot for a really long time, and one of the things I love to do with it, instead of just saying, what should I do, or but to ask more strategic questions, like what information do I need to know? What happens if I move in this direction? What is invisible to me that could be visible? And so it's not just, yes, it's sort of fortune telling, but it's also a tool for sort of fortune creating, right? So you can forecast and get the information you need, again, to position yourself correctly to sort of make progress and get to the destinations you personally choose. And I must say that we're sort of in a high chaos environment. And nobody disagrees. I've been saying that for some years, and that nobody disagrees with me anymore. I say we're in a high chaos world, and everyone goes,
Yeah.
So the ability to find the correct information, to keep your options open, to be flexible is critical. And tarot is a really nice tool for that. But it's not the only tool. Like any sort of divination/forecasting tool can be useful.
Yeah. What's your go-to tarot deck?
I've been using the Gilded Tarot for 20 odd years now. It's like my primary client deck.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a Waite-Smith style deck. I also can read Marseille, and I've been getting into Lenormand, but I must say for many, many years, I was sort of a serial deck monogamist. Like I had one deck that I read until it fell apart, and then I would get another deck. And then one day I bought a second deck, and so now I have like 20 decks, and it's just they keep coming at me.
It's kind of addictive.
Now I'm sort of a deck slut, and I have all of these decks. But I primarily read with the Gilded Tarot, and I like it because I like the aesthetic, obviously, and that means a lot when you do tarot. But I also have a really good rapport with my deck in that it tends to give really practical, proactive advice, which matches my sort of consulting and personal style. I tend to be super proactive, productive. I want to be practical about things. So and then I have other decks I use for my personal, very woo kind of intuitive readings. But when I read for clients, it's much more about like, where are the hidden risks and which of three options creates the path that is closest to your destination. And so I have a much more practical style for that. I guess it is a beautiful deck. Somebody commented that it was beautiful, and it is beautiful. It's got a little bit of a steampunky sort of vibe, which I like.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that too, that certain decks are good for, it seems like certain decks are better for certain topics or questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I have decks that I use solely for enchantment. So I don't use them to read at all. I just use them for doing magic, which is a really cool sort of area of practical enchantment. So I'll either pick the cards that symbolize things I want to manifest and use them as effectively like petition cards. Also, I will lay out things that I want. I don't know if you've ever done this. This is a great magical technique. Get a deck that you're not going to be using for readings and put the cards you want in your layout, like craft it the way you want it. You're like, Celtic Cross, this is my past, and this is what I want my future to be, and this is the outcome I prefer. And then leave it out and just enchant on it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's almost like a weird symbolic vision board.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Another way to set intentions, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting because when I started reading tarot, I really did become kind of attached to one deck. Like the Wizard Tarot has a lot of dragon imagery. But I got other decks, but then I always went back to that one deck if I really wanted to get a good, get a solid reading. But I always kind of assumed that could be the case because I started with runes. And when I started learning how to do runes, and that was what I started with, it was a big emphasis on building a connection to your stones, like sleeping with it, beside you on your pillow, and like kind of creating a personal relationship with your runes. And so then when I went to the tarot deck, I kind of felt like I needed to do the same thing. And I don't know if that's common or if it's not common, or so I kind of like you, when I move away from that deck, I almost feel like I'm cheating or something. So
Yeah, I think it's especially important for me, like when I read for people, and I don't really do just straight up tarot like as a business model. It's much more like
Mhm.
I'm working with clients, and then as part of the client package, I'll lay cards for them, or I have kind of like a reading and consultation where we'll drop some cards around things, but then we'll spend an hour, we'll look at the cards, but then we'll spend an hour talking about a plan based on what we discover in the cards. Because to me, that's much more useful than just, well, here's some cards. That's nice. Because the more useful part of this is, so what do I do with this information?
Yeah.
How do I make it, how do I actualize the result of this? How do I mitigate risk? Right. So if you get a reading that's bad, you're like, oh, well, that sucks. But like, what do you do about that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the next steps of it, other than just finding out what's what do I do now?
What do you do next? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And with tarot, there's always the thing of like, not even necessarily mitigating, but like the idea of like, okay, like, usually with the tarot, it's not necessarily, a change is happening. So how are you, which for a business would be a huge thing. Like, how are we going to navigate this change that's coming? I could see that 100% being like, all right, this is great. So now if something happens, we already have a plan on how to work through this issue. So yeah, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and when it's a forecasting tool, then it's just one of the things you look at, right? So it's as useful to look at, like, for a business, industry specific news and forecasts as it is to look at the cards, right? They go together.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see those definitely playing off of each other or validating one or the other.
Yeah, I would be really curious to, like I said before, not to rehash something I already said, but talking about so many people, I think at least dipped their toes in this world that maybe you wouldn't suspect did. I'd be really curious to know if there's, what kind of big companies out there are, very likely doing things like this to cover all of their bases. It's something that, I know that we do, and we know a lot of people that have businesses use tarot all the time to kind of project, like, what's going on, things that could be coming up. So I wonder how much that's utilized in the business world.
Well, and in sort of my career world, I don't really see that very often. Like, I'll use the tools and techniques personally to try to get, to get information, but they're not. But at the same time, it's kind of awesome if they're not. I know that sounds weird, but like, small businesses and all of us people on the ground, individuals, we can use whatever advantage we can get.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So if we are leveraging these tools for our own things, our own projects, which are definitionally going to be more powerful and enchanted and personal than like capitalistic hellscape corporate goals, then good for us, right? Like, there's always been this sort of like, ooh, which rich and famous people use astrology? Well, yeah, you hear about the Reagans or whatever, always had an astrologer or whatever. But the key point is, why don't we?
Yeah.
Right? Like, forget them. They're fine. They'll be fine no matter what. Like, what tools can we use? And this is where, instead of saying, oh, big businesses should use these magical tools, I'm like, no, let's steal the tools of big business that we know works because they're like have invested a lot of money in it. Let's steal them and use it for our own cool stuff.
That's yes. Gracious said, I like that idea. Let's do it.
Let's do it. That's right.
Let's do it.
It's funny how much project management is kind of occulted in the traditional definition of occult being hidden. Like, there's a lot of really good tools and techniques for rolling with risk and being flexible and getting things done and making smart goals that you can actually achieve that a lot of people just don't know about. right?
Yeah.
And the creative, really intuitive folks who are effectively going to be building the better world that we know is possible after this, like crashes down, they're the ones who need this the most, right? This is who I want having these skills, because I see so many people with these amazing visions for their future, for the future of the world, for the future of their families and communities. But getting from the vision to like, these are the actual doable tasks, the little pieces that I'm going to get up every morning and do. There's like some weird occult knowledge in there, right? Like there's some hidden systems and tools that a lot of people just aren't aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't know any. We're just trying to hit 200 subs on YouTube. We don't know what the heck's going on, Maggie.
Well, and that's the thing. And when did you start? What year roughly did you start working with clients and stuff for putting this together?
So if I recall correctly, the blog started in 2015, which is a crazy amount of time ago. I started kind of rolling out some very early readings and stuff because that was the original thing I was doing, is like having client readings. I started doing that probably 16, 17. And it just very kind of, sort of very cheap and part-timey and just very kind of like low key. And doing readings like I had early on, I did a lot of this kind of Black Swan reading where I'm like, okay, so Black Swan is a crazy destructive event that nobody can predict, right? But if you can predict it, then it's not a black swan for you anymore.
Yeah.
If you can predict it, then if you know something bad is coming, then you're not as impacted, or you can do things to avoid or mitigate the impact. And so I did a lot of that kind of work early on. And then over time, I started working, consulting kind of individually with clients more. And then in 2020, like in the middle of like having cancer treatment, because I guess I needed a hobby in addition to that, I started putting out the planner. So I'd been doing this kind of like astro magic bullet journal thing for myself for some years, where I would just go through and kind of note good days and bad days and the sorts of things that are good for different days of the lunar cycle and different days based on the planet, the day of the week and all of that. And I got tired of handwriting it, because, bullet journal is very handwriting intensive. And so I started doing it digitally. And then I was like, oh, other people might want this. And so now there's like, you could like, every month I put out a little planner that talks about kind of like good days for different things based on this weird, like huge alchemy set of astro stuff and lunar days from the Hygromantia and kind of other weird behind the scenes stuff that I do.
I wanted to go back and ask you about the Black Swan readings. So was that just something that was happening as you were reading for people, that it was like unexpected that those were happening, or were you going into the reading like that was what you were looking for?
No, I actually crafted a specific reading called the Black Swan. And the idea is, and this is based on this guy Taleb, who really good ideas, really douchebaggy online. So what a jerk he turned out to be online. But he had some books, and one of the books talks about the Black Swan, which are these unpredictable, very large impact kind of events. And so I started doing these readings where I would sort of identify, and you could do, like, I don't really do them anymore for clients. I mean, like anybody can do them. So you just identify areas of your life where you have risk or concern, and then pull some cards. Pull a card for each area, or like pull a main card and then two sub cards, and sort of say, did the tower pop up effectively? Is there anything scary? And then if something's scary, instead of avoiding it or freaking out, then you reshuffle and go back in and say, okay, what do we do about this? Right? So here's something coming that's unpleasant and a surprise. What do I do about it?
Yeah.
You can also do that for things that are coming that are like really good. Right? You get the sun and you're like, that's awesome. Great. How do I strengthen that? How do I embrace that? So it's just kind of
to another level.
Yeah. You're sort of like digging down into it and sort of saying, now that I know what to watch out for, what do I want to do about that? And this is just classical corporate risk mitigation, right? You can avoid a risk, you can mitigate it, you can, like there's all these sort of techniques for dodging them or strengthening the positive things, or so, yeah, it's like a whole, again, another weird area of kind of the project management world that I find incredibly useful for just life stuff.
It was just interesting because you were going through the years, of when you were doing it. And I was like, oh, these Black Swan ratings are like right before 2020 when everybody experiences the Black Swan kind of moment.
I know.
Isn't that weird?
It was weird. Well, and my 2020 was kind of everyone's 2020 was weird. Like mine wasn't weirder than anyone else's. It was weird. Everything was weird. But mine was especially personally a challenge because that was the year that I had a cancer diagnosis.
Wow. Mm-hmm. On top of everything else that's happened in the world.
You can approach it. Yes, it was crazy. On the other hand, though, I have to say that because when you have a cancer treatment, you get very immunocompromised. I'm all like, yeah, all you people wear masks. Ha ha.
Everybody's got to wear a mask.
So, trying to look on the bright side. And that whole process took it's like a yearish of treatment. And then, you have to regrow hair and stuff. Yeah. But, and that's where it was from that experience that I wrote the Cancer Grimoire, which I always like to talk about on podcasts because it's free. It's released Creative Commons, so anyone can take it and add to it, change it, share it. And it's just all about the magic I did when I had this kind of health diagnosis.
Before we get to that, because I definitely want to talk about it, we had someone who wanted to know where to find your planner. Fantasy Animal Vegan wants to know where to find your planner.
So all of my stuff lives on circlethrice.com, right? So that's kind of the main place that you can find all my things. And it's there's a membership that you can sign up for. Since it's a monthly planner, it makes sense to have a monthly membership. So it's you log on and check out the membership, and it's like $10 a month. And the first month is always free. So, you can especially now it's the beginning of September, you could get on, sign up, download one of the planners or several of them and see if you like it. Right. And then if you don't, you just cancel, no harm, no foul. But if you like it, then October will be out in, a few more weeks. So
nice. Yes. And Fantasy Animal Vegan, all those links are posted up at the top of the chat. So go check it out. So
and if you're listening on the podcast, all those links will be down below in the description.
So now let's talk about the Cancer Grimoire.
You got it. So I had this cancer diagnosis and I'm fine. You always have to say that when you tell people. Everyone's like, you're like, no, I'm fine now. I'm in remission. It's all good. And during that process, I did a ton of enchantment work, magic, intentions. I had other people doing magic for me. I'm very, very blessed to be kind of part of some big global communities of magicians like Rune Soup, and people were like stepping up and doing intentions and sending me healing waters and angel prayers. And it was amazing. Right. So, and then when I decided to do allopathic treatment, right, which is everybody got to do their own math, right? You get a diagnosis, you have to figure out what makes sense. But when I decided to do kind of, regular Western doctor treatment, one, it's on, we have a terrible medical system. So it's on us to figure out all the complementary things, right? So I was lucky that I found some really good resources, for example, for acupuncture and integrative medicine, which that's the person who could tell you if the herbs you're thinking of taking are going to be fine or weird, right? And then when I went through chemo, I engaged with the chemo drugs as poison spirits, like Goetia Grimoire spirits. And I was experiencing them as these sort of living poison entities and working through a process of trying to identify them and how to bind them or, engage with them. And it was good for me, right? Because it's a positive, proactive way of approaching a treatment, a situation that feels kind of out of control and somewhat unpleasant. And then afterward, I decided to write about it. And so I wrote up this book about what I did and the things I tried and what I learned, right? And yeah, I've been really honored that people take it and share it. Also, I've been contacted by like people in oncology, like medical professionals who are like, oh my God, yes, I'm going to carefully share some of the stuff with, not all of it, obviously. Some of it's pretty woo, right? Pretty witchy, but had a really great response. And so I always like to talk a little bit about it because it's, like I said, it's free and I sort of feel called to get it out there. Yeah. So if folks are struggling with kind of a health diagnosis, there's some really interesting stuff I learned about like the nocebo effect, right? So everyone knows the placebo effect, which is this thing will cure you even though it's nothing, right? The nocebo effect is the opposite, which is if you're primed for a medicine to be hard on you or have more side effects, you will actually have those side effects. Yeah. It's like negative placebo. So one of the things you can do is to just sort of avoid knowing about the side effects. And there's this, like, for example, there's a story I tell in the book where I've been going through this treatment for, months, as you do, and never really had any stomach. I mean, I was nauseous, but I never really had any heartburn. And then one day I went in and like the nurse practitioner was like, yeah, do you ever get any heartburn? Because some people get heartburn from this. And then that night I had this terrible heartburn. And I was like, hey, no. And I went back and I'm like, don't tell me about any side effects. I don't want to know. I don't get side effects. I would keep telling them, I never get side effects. And of course, you do. But by saying I don't, I think it mitigated how tough it was. Just physically on me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I really, if anyone wants to go, like I said, go grab it, share it, add your own spirits, right? Because the spirit engagement was very specific to the things I did. So for example, one of the chemo drugs I had was doxorubicin, which my oncologist called the red devil. Like when he's literally like, we're gonna give you this drug, they call it the red devil. And I'm like, okay, then. Well, all right. So you kind of find a way of sort of engaging with them as if they are, as if they are actual entities. And that's how it worked for me, was that these were actual entities that were embodied in me. And it was a super fascinating sort of initiatory, frankly, process.
So could you explain that a little bit more, going into maybe an example? Because you were talking about like how you were thinking about them in perhaps in different ways, because there's so many drugs you have to take, right, when you're going through those treatments. So it's like you said you were kind of like trying to integrate them, but then some of me were feeling like you were trying to get them out. If I'm understanding correctly.
So there were, so you have a certain number of like pre-chemo drugs, which keep you from getting really sick when you take the chemo drugs. But the chemo drugs themselves, a lot of times you're only on a handful of them. Like I was on 3. And what I would do is during my chemo process, at first, I would prime myself by reading. I was actually very Inanna Descent to the Underworld. So I was reading the poetry of Enheduanna, right, which is all this devotional Inanna poetry. And her descent to the underworld formed a sort of narrative structure for which I experienced my treatment. Okay. And so I would read something, or I would pray, or I would have I would pray the Mary Oliver's Rosary a lot, which is like the Rosary, but with all these cool Mary Empress of Hell prayers. But I would, when I was getting these various drugs, I would sort of engage and see what impressions came to me. So the Red Devil ended up being the Red Dragon for me, and I used the Ho-Ophis Dragon Prayer to help sort of kind of bind and control that entity. And then I would tell it what I needed, which was to go to the site of my tumor and shrink it without harming the rest of me. So it's like a binding controlling of these poison entities.
Gotcha.
And so I had these sometimes these very vivid sort of like visual impressions of what these beings were, and then I would hunt down an entity or a prayer like Mary, Empress of Hell, who is this really interesting form of Mary that controls demons, right? Or Hecate, who the U is sacred to Hecate, and I think a lot of people know the Taxol, which is a very common breast cancer treatment drug, is made from poison yew. It's made from Pacific yew, but like it's the poison tree of the yew plant that becomes this drug. So I would work with Hecate about. So it was like this sort of process I went through. And the Grimoire talks a little bit about how I went through the process. And then it lists the spirit that I know. My spirit list is only like 3 long because I only had the 3. But you can do the same process if you're engaging with some sort of treatment drug that's hard on you. And you can use the same sort of structure to identify your own sort of petitioning and binding, controlling prayers around making these drugs work for you. And then after the treatment, I actually did more research on the origins of the drugs because I didn't want to know too much beforehand. Because again, you don't want to know you don't want to know about the side effects. But I did some research and there was a lot of really interesting, sort of like fascinating, odd synchronicities around like where the drugs were discovered or what they were originally used for.
That's what I was getting ready to ask about, because you made the connection to the yew tree and all the stuff that's going on there, and I find it fascinating. Like so often, so many of our drugs are being produced out of natural things. What did you find through your journey there that you would recommend? Like, what were some things you found that were naturalistic that benefited you through that time?
So yeah, we have to work to combine whatever Western treatment we're getting with kind of other modalities. I had, like I said, an amazing acupuncturist who specialized in chemo patients, which is great. So he reduced neuropathy and helped with nausea. I also I have a friend who has a website called vitalveils.com, and she does healing mushroom blends. And so she made me a blend, like a custom blend for me. And so and that's in the Grimoire, by the way, in case you're curious about that site and some of the things I did. I also had, at the end of my treatment, I had radiation. And for that, my neighbor made me a really nice kind of like essential oil skin salve, because your skin can get really hard. And I added a Asclepius oil from Sphere and Sundry. And this was one of the places where like every I had to go to radiation every day. And then every week I go see the radiation oncologist, and he was constantly floored at how my skin was doing. Like, you're not getting any redness, any rashes, nothing. How are you doing that? And I'm all like, essential oils and things. So, and yeah. And in fact, I'm sort of really pleased now that I could say that I actually have a collaboration with Sphere and Sundry, and recommend Caitlin's stuff in the planner every day. So if you're a collector of that stuff, right? If you love that materia, because it's great materia, and but the Asclepius healing oil was incredibly powerful and magical and beneficial for me.
Yeah, I can see how this information would help so many people, because we know a lady that just went through all of this. Her experience was just absolutely horrific. She's sharing it on a regular basis, and it's for her to have known that there's other options out there that would have combated some of these things that she had to go through. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, it's like because the Western medicine is putting you through one thing where I feel like a lot of the things that help with that are coming from the woo-woo, So having both of those in your arsenal sound like it was a huge help through that process.
Yeah, and more than just that, it was a way of breaking down the boundary between the two, because I know that a lot of folks who, like your audience or my membership, are going to be suspicious of some of the Western medicine stuff, and rightly so. But at the same time, having all of that over here and then all of the alternative stuff over here and never the twain shall meet isn't helpful either. So I just feel like a more of like an integrative process where I'm not just embracing the alternative things and incorporating them into my treatment, but I'm also enchanting the Western medicine things and making them more magical. And frankly, and it's funny that worked so well for me because it's the same thing I do with the whole project management, practical magic. They're not separate. They're combined. And it's such a more powerful and more enchanted way to be in the world where you don't have like, over here, I have like chop wood, carry water and go to work and blah, blah, blah. And then over here in this corner, I have enchantment. Well, the problem with that is that the world puts a lot of pressure on us. Everybody got to hustle. Everybody got to get all their goals. So when you don't enchant those things to begin with, the enchantment kind of gets pushed off to the side.
Yeah.
Instead, you incorporate the enchantment and the magic in all of those things. And then not only are your goals more magical, but you're living a more enchanted life baseline. And so there's not this divide. It's more integrated.
Yes. I am also liking the sound of enchantment. Yeah. Like it doesn't, yeah. This is all hitting me like a ton of bricks, Ivy.
I was going to say the same thing.
It's like we do, I work as a medium and I think of my medium work as this one thing. And then the rest of the things I have to do is something else. But why wouldn't they just all be together? Because everything's connected. It should be integrated.
Well, and one of my goals is really to get people to just be doing more enchantment or doing more magic, whatever kind of magic it is, right? Like you don't have to have a specific thing that you do. It's not, I'm not gatekeeping here. Any kind of way that you make your life more enchanted, whether it's through outright, I am doing sigils and I am calling on old gods, or it's like my creative art or my way of engaging with nature. Those things are equally enchanted. And the more of that we can do, the better off, frankly, the whole world and all of us are going to be.
Yes, I agree.
That, yeah. And what you said, that hit hard too, because I think I am especially like, I felt personally attacked there. Because I very much like have one foot in one side and another foot on the other. And I talked about earlier about using runes and tarot and stuff like that, but I haven't done a very good job at blending everything together. And this is a discussion we've had before, where oftentimes when people are into spirituality or whatever it is, that is maybe a little bit off the beaten path, they tend to do it kind of in secret and aren't open about, or at least many people that I've known have been that way. I am that way to a certain extent, where you can't have open conversations about these things sometimes. And so, this idea that the more open you are about it, maybe the more that you can blend that together more naturally. Would you say that, Ivy?
Well, and everything has its place, right? It's not like I'm going to go to my corporate day job and be like, all right, we're going to have like salt water and we're going to call the quarters or anything like that, because that's not appropriate and that's fine, right? Not everybody is
for sure.
Interested in, right? And I also don't, like I said, I don't want to do anyone else's math. There are people who keep their stuff on the lowdown for very practical reasons, including child custody issues or living in an area of the world where you cannot be as publicly open. So I'm never going to tell people if you're being secretive, it's bad. That's actually, there's stuff you do keep close, even if you are public about a lot of other stuff, right? To be silent is one of the 4 powers, right? It's a useful skill to have, but the key is,
I don't know about that one.
I'm not good at it, but it is.
I talk all day and then I come home and I talk one here. So I need maybe I could take a lesson from that.
It's not so much about like whether you're public or not, or always public, or public in spaces where it doesn't benefit you. It's more just that when you live in a way that's enchanted for yourself, whether or not you're sharing that with any other group of person, but you're just still doing it, then you're living a more enchanted life and your life benefits, right? So, you know, and people will struggle with this. They're like, so you do magic at work, like day job work? No, I'm not in there at the office doing magic, but I'm still enchanting my life so that I'm experiencing a more enchanted world and using my best kind of positive intentions for benefits for the thing that pays my bills and the thing that keeps my family safe and healthy, and you know, the goals that I have personally. And anyone can do that, even if they're never out or public. Right? It's just when we box it in a corner somewhere and it's only this thing we do like once on the full moon, once a month, or well, maybe for the quarters or the cross quarter or whatever it is, right? However you approach it, do more. Like, you're not going to get good at it if you don't do a lot of it. So enchant everything all the time. And then you'll get better at enchantment and you'll learn what works for you, because it's not the same for everybody, right? Everybody's got their own kind of approach and things that work well for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, because we've talked about, that just brings to mind like all the things that you've gone through, Jenny, like where you go to do one thing and all of a sudden something else happens that you weren't expecting. So you have to kind of go through that. I imagine you have to go through a process of like, this is what's working. And when I'm enchanting, this is what works better for me. And it's going to be a whole learning process attached to that.
Yeah.
For sure.
And it's frankly the same with figuring out what works for you to get your goals done, right? There's like a big toolbox of cool ways, cool techniques that you can use to make your goals better. And by better, I mean more able for you to achieve them, right? Like I don't judge someone's goal. If someone wants $1 million, as long as they don't want to like, you know, hurt people to get it, I'm fine. Like whatever is your goal. But there are more achievable goals, more enchantable goals. And then there are goals that are like these undoable blobs of mushy goo that you end up not making traction on. And so the more people learn about these techniques, the more they can get better at it. Same with magic, right? The more magic you do, the better you get at it. So I have this little thing that I have on my site called the Lunation Rite. And the idea is that it's a 29-day dawn working. You do it every day for a full lunar cycle, right? You start on the new moon, and each lunar day there's like this sort of like purpose to the day based on this ancient grimoire, but then also there's a being from the Orphic hymns that you can contact. And so it's like this sort of working. And it's not long, because if I'm going to do something at dawn, it needs to be simple and not that hard, because I'm not that good in the morning, frankly.
Yeah.
But you do anything for 29 days, you're going to get better at it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, just want to remind everyone who's hanging out in chat tonight, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in chat. If you're listening to the podcast at another time, all the links and stuff that we're talking about are going to be located in the description below. And you can always feel free to come and ask questions on the YouTube video or whatever, and I'll be more than happy to help out there in the comments section. All right, so if you got questions, throw them in there and we'll pass them along to Ivy. We still got plenty of time left for conversation. So
I love this comment, by the way, that Journey of Self-Discovery made about like putting things in the cauldron, right? Mixing it up, throwing it all in there and combining it in a way that, you know, makes it stronger. So yeah, absolutely. And that's such a lovely picture too, for those of us who are of a little bit more of a witchy bent, right? Which is more of my personal angle, right? I work with a lot of people who have a lot of different approaches to magic, but my sort of personal approach is a bit more witchy. And so that really resonates with me.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's so funny because we've had so many guests on here and we have so many people that do so many similar things and they all do it very differently. Everyone kind of has their own way that they develop things, and it's always interesting to see how many people we have coming from so many different paths that are all kind of actually walking in the same way. They're just doing things a little bit differently than everybody else. So
that's really powerful. One of my sort of theories around this is that there's And this is, I think, what trips all of us up when we're just starting. Now, I haven't been just starting for a really long time, but people out there just starting with this stuff, they don't want to do it wrong, right? You don't want to do it wrong. It seems scary. You might make something happen that might freak you out, right? And I remember that feeling. The thing is, there are wrong ways to do things, but there's not one right way. And that's the trick. If you can get your brain around that, you'll do much better, because people think, well, if I can figure just out the right way, the right spell, the right approach, then it'll all work all the time. There's not one right way. There are wrong ways, ineffective, lackadaisical, not organized, not symbolically resonant for you. Those are wrong ways to do magic. But there's lots and lots of right ways. There's a world of history and geography of people having done these enchantments from basically when we became human, right? Mm-hmm. So there's this huge kind of it's like our birthright to make magic. And there's lots of different ways to do it correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
What are some of your favorite types of magic to do?
Ooh, so I've been. So again, I have sort of a witchy, which is much more intuitive, kind of not necessarily Wiccan, but more like an intuitive spirit approach to things. So that's one of the things I do. I am a huge Orphic hymn stan. I have my copies of the Orphic hymns happen to be sitting right here. So I that's like a phone book for the old gods. I love that. It's incredibly useful. I have 4 or 5 different translations of it now too. So because I'm always kind of collecting them. And if you're curious about that, there's one online that's like a free one. It's the Thomas Taylor translation. It's totally free and out of copyright online. So if you're curious about these, you can go grab them. I must say that the online ones rhyme, and I can't bring myself to do a lot of rhyming invocation. To me, I always feel a little bit like I'm reciting nursery rhymes or something. It feels a little strange. So I prefer kind of the non-rhyming translations. Totally personal preference, by the way. So I do a lot of that. I also do a lot of PGM, Greek papyri stuff, right? So I have a translation of the Greek papyri, and that's like a big, massive working magician's notes document. So there's tons of interesting stuff in there that you can leverage. So, and I like that a lot. I don't do very much saint bothering. I have a lot of clients who do a lot of saints magic, and it's a very powerful form of magic. I do less of that, but I have a few kind of my favorite, basically forms of the BVM, and that's Blessed Virgin Mary stuff that I enjoy. So those are some of the things I like.
Nice. Sounds like a lot of language, words, speaking.
Not surprisingly, maybe, considering I have books and I have all these blogs and I have a Substack, and I have a surprising number of clients who are also like, I really want to write a book, and I'm like, why am I not surprised?
Keisha has an odd question. She wanted to know if you were a musician.
Well, is she asking me or is she asking Frosty? Because Frosty is definitely got.
She knows about Frosty.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
She's asking you.
I have been known to sing things. So I can sing, and I had a bunch of piano lessons as a youth, which I'm sure helped my brain development. But I am not a skilled pianist, so I would argue that I am not a musician in that regard. So.
That's interesting, though.
Stand. That is the most handy tool ever for doing ritual, because it holds whatever you're working off of, so you don't have to hold it in your hand.
So it's not a music stand, people. It's a magic stand.
It's a magic. Actually, I got that for Christmas this past year.
Ooh, and nice.
Yeah. Because I was
cool books on. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I had a bunch of stuff up there, right? Because I'm constantly doing stuff. But I would pull out my altar. I have several different altar spaces, and in fact, I have one that rolls, which I love. It's this little filing, like an antique filing cabinet on wheels, and I just roll it where I need it and point it in the direction I want it. But then I'm always like, okay, there's like candles burning and incense, and then I've got this paper in my hand, and I'm trying to do stuff, and it feels weird, and the lighting's strange, and I'm like, if I only had a place to set these, this would be so much easier. And so I ended up getting a magic stand for Christmas so that I could do that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Me and Chico said the same thing at the same time. Jinx, Chico, jinx.
Hey, well, you were talking earlier about, it kind of brought to mind, like, you're talking about words and the books, and that's kind of how you do things. And I think that's another point to what we were talking about earlier about how there's not necessarily a right way to do things. Because I am heavily inspired by music. Music is kind of very spiritual to me. And I noticed that when I first started trying to meditate and stuff like that, having some kind of music was an integral part for me to be able to do that. And I felt like I had more magical power or ability or whatever when I was like in a trance listening to music. So I guess that could be a lot different for a lot of different kinds of people.
I think that makes a ton of sense. My husband is a magician and a skilled musician, and he's got a very sort of like bardic modality to how he does magic. So like he can cast protective space with a guitar or a mandolin, right? So like that kind of activity. You can also do movement oriented magic. So in the Lunation Rite, I sort of, when I was doing it, I ended up with a series of hand gestures that worked for me because I was doing the same kind of base invocation every morning, not only for 29 days, it took me a couple months of working it to figure it out. And then I ran a beta group through it. And then I ran another group through it. And so like, I've done it a ton, right? Obviously. So I got very good at doing the base invocation, and I had a certain hand gestures that were meaningful to me. And I find if I'm going to meditate, since I have a hard time stilling my brain, some sort of moving meditation or yoga pose meditation tends to work a lot better for me than just trying to sit still and be quiet. How can I do that? I can't do that. So there's different approaches. I will say that the approach I'm always a little bit suspicious of, the one thing I would say that doesn't seem to work so well is if you just read things and you don't actually do things. Like reading magic books, and I've got a ton of magic books, so I love them, but reading them and not doing any magic is not probably effective, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely like speaking out loud. I know you can't always, obviously during chemotherapy, I was not being very loud about my prayers and things because I don't want to disturb the other people getting chemotherapy. But using your breath, speaking out loud, making sound that vibrates through the air is an incredibly powerful kind of magical tool that I think we've been using for, many thousands of years.
Yeah. I would agree.
So yeah, someone said chanting. Yes, chanting and singing and speaking petitions and making music. It's something that we've been doing for, a really, really long time.
I have the opposite problem though of you, Frosty. When I'm doing meditation, I has to be quiet or else I get distracted.
Yeah, it has to be certain. Well, I mean, specifically, like I found that I could really meditate well with high long.
Yeah.
Like where it's more of like a repetitive kind of drum, kind of trance. Like, I'm not going to turn on, Highway to Hell. But,
I have an interest in meditation.
Music. I mean, who knows? I'm not saying you can't.
Meditation, right?
Yeah. But for me, it was like finding a more trance-like kind of music that I could do that with. Yeah.
Because we would listen to some chanting kind of yoga-ish music in my trance medium class, and it would distract the crap out of me. It's like I needed the quiet, and so yeah. Well, going back to that thing we were just talking about, where everybody's different and different things for different people.
And you started off like you were really there for a while, like the whole thing of like sitting in the power, where it was like a dark room, completely shut off, like from the outside world, kind of.
Yeah.
Which for me, I think not that I couldn't do that, but I think it would drive me crazy at first. Like,
Yeah. Everybody's different.
yeah.
Well,
So
and I always have this approach where everyone should probably have 4 tools in their toolkit. Like when you're starting out, you have 4 tools in your toolkit, and one of them is some sort of altered consciousness model. So journeying, trance meditation, something along those lines. The next one is, of course, some sort of odds manipulation. That's practical spellcraft or intention work of some kind. The third is a spirit engagement, whether it's just your ancestors or saints or angels or, you know, gods and goddesses or place spirits. It doesn't matter, but that you have some kind of spirit engagement. And then the fourth is a divinatory tool, right? And if you've got one of each of those, you have a very, and like, it doesn't matter which one, right? It doesn't matter which ones you choose, but if you have all 4 of those, you are in a really good spot for leveraging more enchantment into your life. And in fact, I have this, I mean, I personally am at risk of this, and then I have clients who are at risk of this, where we're like, you know, I have a practical goal of, you know, let's say starting a vegetable garden. Like, we cannot think of a more earth-based, practical, lovely goal than that. And then when you go, you know what I really need to do to start a vegetable garden is learn all of the astrology. No, that's the wrong approach, right? Use what you know, stick with what works for you, and leverage that toward your more practical goal. Now, if your goal is to become an astrologer, that's different. Then yeah, obviously learning astrology is part of the goal. But if your goal is to start a vegetable garden, you don't have to learn all the magic before that. You use what you know, and you use the tools you're comfortable with. And that's a much more effective way of kind of reaching kind of those destinations that you set for yourself.
That's really intriguing. I hadn't never heard that before, but that makes a lot of sense. The 4 tools. I made a note there. I wrote that down on my pad of paper because that's been something on my journey. You know, I've only been at this really for a few years of actually, you know, like, hey, I'm going to start working on learning. You know, for me, it was the runes. And then I'm gonna, you know, start messing around with tarot. And then as we talked about, I started working with trying to get into some kind of altered state or altered consciousness. And then, you know, me and Ginny have had discussions about like, well, what else should we learn about, and what are we doing next? And that's something that we've been bringing up lately, which is like herbalism and like, you know, green witchcraft and stuff like that. We have someone who's close to us who's magnificent at it. I've almost gotten to the point where we just talked to her about what kind of, you know, what we can use to heal this thing, because it seems to work better than anything else. So yeah, that's absolutely fascinating, and something I think that that is interesting to work on specifically for me. So
If I were going to sell, and I wouldn't because this just seems like very hokey and witch talky, but if I was going to sell like a starter kit for living an enchanted life, like if you send me money and I'll send you this box of the starter kit, this is what would be in the starter kit. So now I'm just going to tell you guys so you can just do it yourselves, right? Don't have to spend a dime. The first one is I would encourage an ancestor practice. If you think that there's beings out there, that there's more than just the world we're on, but you don't know and you're a little freaked out, just start with those people who came before you, right? That's kind of your base starting point. For spellcraft, I would absolutely do sigils because they're super flexible, super cheap. You literally like piece of paper and pen and you're good to go. For a divinatory method, something like sortilege, like cards or runes, they're usually really easy. You just pick one and whatever appeals to you and go with it. And you could spend decades getting really good. Like obviously there's really good, but if you just want to do something for yourself, something you can take, like do some forecasting with, just pick one. And then for, you know, for the altered consciousness kind of stuff, basic sitting meditation is a good place to start. Doesn't work for everyone. A sitting meditation, or if that's too much, walking meditation, go for a walk, right? Like that would be the ultimate beginner's toolkit. And if you've got those kind of 4 corners covered, then you're in a really good place to start your journey with it and to use it in a practical way.
Yeah,
excellent.
I think Frosty's been looking into magic for a long time, but he's never really put it all together for himself yet. So I see the wheels turning as you're explaining all of this.
It's a personal help session here all of a sudden.
Sorry. Yeah, advice is
No, it's fine.
Yeah, advice
it's
is my
great.
love language. So I'm constantly doing that. People call me up and be like, I've had a terrible day. And I'm like, I need you to get a pen. And I realize it's annoying to some people. Like I'm like really bad about it. But yeah, no, it's a way to sort of get started. And if somebody's like thinking, I want to do this spellcrafty thing, but it feels there's too much. Like it's all too much. I have a little free guide on my website on how I do sigils. I've been doing sigils for a really, really, really long time. Right? They're all cool again now, but like I was doing them like in the actual 90s when it was kind of
when it wasn't so cool.
I did it before it was cool. But no, seriously, it's like a 7-page little free guide on how I do it. And I love them because one, you can be dead broke and literally go to 7-Eleven and steal some napkins and one of those little pencils from where they do the lottery counter, and you can make sigils. Like boom, it's that cheap and easy. The other thing is that you're not going to find a spell for like a new bicycle in a grimoire, right? But you can make a sigil for that, which means it's very powerful for like practical enchantment.
So for those who might be listening or watching now that don't know what a sigil is, will you explain it?
I would love to. Yeah. So a sigil is it's like a symbolic glyph that encodes an actual sentence of intention or desire. So you start with a sort of a statement of something that you desire. So like my family is healthy and safe. It's just a lovely sort of one. Or I have a new bicycle. Like that's totally legitimate. And then what you do is you take this process of taking the actual letters, which are like this very sort of linguistic construct forebrain kind of thing, and turning them into a symbolic representation of itself. So it becomes this glyph. And then what you do is you effectively launch that into the world. Now, there's a ton of different ways to do this. And one of the weirdest things about sigils is that classically, the original kind of like Austin Spare sort of like chaos magic version of it was you're supposed to masturbate to launch the sigils, which I don't do. That's just right. But that was like the original way you're supposed to do it. The idea is you're supposed to disconnect your conscious mind from thinking of the sentence and put the intent of the sentence into the glyph. And the distracting of the conscious mind is clearly like
you're just getting yourself into that other consciousness,
other state, and then you kind of launch them, and then sometimes people destroy the sigil, and sometimes people save them, and it's kind of depends on what works for you. And yes, I laugh as well about it. But the way I view them is I have a sort of very, again, witchy modality of this, where I think of them as little imps. I think of them as like little constructed little friends. They're like my little buddies, and then they're like little butterflies, right? They are sweet, and I put them out in little flocks so they can go together, and they don't have very long lifespans, and I put them out into the world, and you just can do them and whenever you want, and it's they can be for all kinds of lovely things. I don't tend to make negative ones because I don't want my little buddies to have to do yucky things, but for any sort of like anything you need or anything that you want to kind of manifest in your life and protections and healing and all that good stuff, I make these little friends, right? And in fact, the sigil book is called Say Hello to My Little Friends. So it's like this little free thing I have on my site because I love them and they're super easy to do. So if somebody's like super new and wants to try something like this out, it's really fun. It's also super creative, right? So you're making these tiny little sketchy little works of art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done it one time and it was pretty fun.
So the problem is you only did it one time.
Yeah.
Which actually seems
Yeah.
like something that
What
would
we're
be like
talking
right down your alley because you're an
Yeah.
artist. So like doing
Mhm.
design like that, I would think would be like you're like you're always doodling. So I would figure that would almost be like a perfect thing for you.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
years ago, I bought a box of 100 little cards and I did 100 sigils. And I did them over the course of about 5.5 months. I did a batch every week. So every week there'd be like a little collection of them that I would have, that I would launch. And then I would be working ahead to like create the statements and make the little drawings. And then I would transfer them to the cards like in a little ritual space and then launch them. And I had some pretty stunning results. But dude, 100 of them, I probably messed up a couple cards. So it was probably like 97. But
Mhm.
you know, if you do them over and over, they get better. They have friends. They're moving the odds in your favor a little bit at a time. It was sort of an amazing experience to kind of go through that and do them.
Is there a wrong way to do a sigil?
I think the wrong way is if you can't let go of the rational statement. That's the whole point of it, is to let go of the rational and let it be symbolic and intuitive. So that sort of letting go of it, right? You're supposed to forget about what they symbolize, which is super fascinating because you made them. You would think you would know that they are, but you have to let yourself kind of forget about them a little bit and let them just cook. So that would be the way to do them wrongly. Otherwise, it's like a personal creative project and everyone's sigils look different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty fun. I want to do them more now.
Yeah.
Yay, then my work here is done.
There we go. We didn't Luce was creating sigils just
Luce is
recently
a
too,
sigil
right?
maker, yes. I think
Yes.
Luce is always making sigils. Yeah.
So there's something for your art stream.
Yeah. Oh yeah, some sigils.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be cool.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the spirit part of what you've been talking about, because of course I'm a medium, so I love talking about spirit stuff. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the gods and goddesses part, but that was one of the things I had written down. I was wondering how do you experience spirit work?
So, first of all, I'm not a medium. So I think that's really useful. I think that's a particular skill set that some people got and some people don't got, right? So I'm not necessarily seeing or hearing them. But where I'm at is that I get so it's like I engage with them in a sort of liminal third place, not where I'm at and not where they're at, but in some sort of like neutral ground kind of space. And then they give me like impressions, and I've heard the term downloads used, right? And so that's kind of how I experience them. I'm a very I have a very relational model to the spirits, right? So I believe in making relationships with them. And sometimes not everybody's your friend, right? So this means that like you might approach a spirit and they're like, yeah, whatever. Because they're just not that into you. So the idea is to find ones that you have a good relationship with. And that's where I'm always pointing to ancestors as a starting point. And specifically like your healthy, happy ancestors, the ones that like have your best hearts in mind. We're not, like the act of dealing with and elevating troubled ancestors is its own thing. But if you're just starting out, if your grandma loved you and now she's gone, just keep talking to her. It'll be fine. She can hear you. And the people who came before us, who kind of have our best in, our want the best for us, are they're great. They're great for like helping your life and giving you luck. It works especially well, by the way, if you have kids. It works the same as it does when you have living grandparents and you have a kid. Like if you have a baby, you can literally go to like an ancestor altar and be like, all right, I made this. I need some stuff. I got bill. Diapers are expensive and you need to help with this. And it often goes really well because they have a vested interest in like the continuity of kind of the line of ancestors. It's a fascinating sort of, just like the families that's alive, right?
True.
And yeah, if you got crazy shit family, because inevitably this comes up, right? Like, nope, they're all terrible. You can move on to like Mighty Dead, who are folks that have gone before, but who are like mentorship figures. Or I do this a lot. If you want to, if you have a vocation you're pursuing, like say you want to be a writer, like this comes up for me. One of the things you can do is identify a writer who's passed and approach them for guidance as a writer. Right? It's like a writing mentorship, but instead of the one that you hopefully can get through like whatever course you took, this is a different one because it's more like a spirit mentorship.
Interesting. I like that. Oh shoot, I had a question. Oh, so going back to what I had originally written down here, what are the gods and goddesses that you connect with?
So I have a long-term relationship with Dionysus, hence the name, right? Hence the sort of like nom de internet. That's been, since I was 18 or so. I had kind of a sort of very significant sort of initiatory experience around that. I also have a long-running relationship with Hecate, and even before this experience with the Taxol and the U, and so I already have kind of a relationship with her. And those are the sort of the primary ones. But that said, having gone through a ton of the Orphic hymns, a lot of the planetary spirits. So these are the spirits that are associated with the classical planets, right? Those are very accessible to most people. And that's the thing about spirit engagement, is some spirits are just very open and easy to engage with. Like, nobody's going to approach Mary or Kuan Yin and get the cold shoulder. It's just not how they roll.
Yeah, very true.
Right? And then some spirits are like these fussy prima donnas who like their people and don't like anyone else. And ironically, a lot of local spirits are actually the biggest fussy babies about this stuff. Like a local spring or a tree will be like, fine, if you come here every day for a year and you bring me water, then I will maybe like you. But so it's kind of a strange, whereas some of these spirits are very ancient and large. Right. So if you're looking at Venus or Jupiter, kind of some of these classical spirits that are associated with planets, those are very accessible because we all have those planets in our chart.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. So I have kind of like my core folks and my ancestors, and then I have sort of like nice but less intense relationships with a lot of kind of like classical Greek and Roman sort of deities. Also from the PGMs, like the Agathos diamond and some of those entities that show up there that are hugely kind of oddly syncretic amalgams of like these different paths. Fascinating sort of area.
So for somebody that doesn't have mediumistic skills or abilities, how would they know that they're connecting with their spirit connections?
So the first, obviously, you can throw some cards on it, right? That's divinatory tools, right? Literally, divination, divinatory contact. You can also though look for omens and synchronicities, right? When I was first engaging with Hecate, I was curious and interested because she's kind of cool, right? Like I'm just sort of like, ooh, she seems really cool. Like think of them as like, it's like being friends. Some of these beings are like being friends with Oprah. Like if you're friends with a famous person, right? They're very cool. You'd like to be friends. They can probably get you into the cool clubs. Maybe you get a free car or something. I don't know. But they're also like, everyone wants to be their friends. And so maybe you don't get a lot of engagement. But when I was engaging with Hecate for the first time, I was doing the Deipnon, which is the classical Greek new moon ceremony to her. And I was engaging, and I was getting dog sightings. I was getting strange synchronicities around certain dates and times. I was seeing certain connections. It was clearly a communication that was working. That said, I have had a long-running fascination with Inanna, the ancient Sumerian goddess, and got nothing for years. Would invoke Inanna and effectively get, thank you for contacting Inanna. Her lady of largest heart cannot respond personally to everything, but we really appreciate your call. Have a nice day, right? I was getting nothing. And then when I got cancer, then suddenly the descent, suddenly it was like this powerful engagement, and I would run across weird art that would come to that, and I was seeing visions that were around that, and I was suddenly, hopefully that's not the only way you get to engage with her, because that would suck. I mean, I know people who have much more positive, practical relationships, right? So that's kind of how I would approach it. So you do a little divination, you look for omens and synchronicities, right? You just see how it feels.
Love it.
And so for people who are maybe new to this and they necessarily don't have deities or things that they've reached out to before, what would you suggest for how to get started? Just kind of do research and see what kind of connects with them? Or
if you've never really thought about engaging with the non-visible world in this way, like I said, your healthy ancestors are a lovely place to start, right?
Okay.
It's going to feel really good, and they can watch over you, right? And then from there, I think it's, the planetary spirits are lovely because, again, they're all in the charts. So if you happen to know, say, from your own chart that your strong sun is particularly strong, or that your Mars is particularly active, those are beings you could engage with and sort of like, as a starting point for that. So I'm a double Leo. So of course I have, like, the sun is kind of as an entity, solar deities tend to connect well with me. So that's another sort of place you can start. And then, where you're drawn to. And, a lot of people are drawn to places, to beings from places and times that have nothing to do with their background or their genetics, or it's not like that. It's not about some sort of gatekeeping thing. It's about creating these positive relationships and seeing kind of what feels good and helpful.
Yeah. Especially since a lot of these are, I don't know how you feel about, but a lot of times I feel like some of these gods and goddesses have gone by different names in different places. So so the gatekeeping definitely not there, because some of these spirits that you're reaching out to might be the same spirits that are the gods that are active in other places in the world, just going by a different name to a certain extent.
We also want to be thoughtful about, though, I mean, it is important to be thoughtful about stepping on other people's kind of lived experiences and religions. That is an important thing to keep in mind, right? Those of us who are coming out of kind of like a sort of Western European background, we've been divorced from some of those earlier pathways. And so if some of those things fall to us, we have to do some negotiation to go back a little bit. Whereas there are cultures who are busy doing this stuff right now. And I'm not going to tell them that I know better than them, right?
For
right?
sure.
So there's also that kind of thoughtfulness around it, which I think is powerful. That said, if you are, if your background is coming more out of Europe, the saints, Virgin Mary, that can be a really powerful source of connection and enchantment and empowerment for people. And it's a lot more, and it can be really more comfortable for folks than, it's sometimes like especially like if your family background comes out of, say, maybe like a Catholicism, right? That can be a really good approach. You certainly won't freak your dead grandmother out, right? By doing that, right? So it just sort of depends on your approach and what you're interested in and what sparks for you.
Excellent. We do have a question here from Shadow Max. What part or parts of yourself did you leave behind, if any, while helping others at the spiritual level? And how do you cleanse before readings?
Oh, what a wonderful, fascinating question. I would say that when I work to help people, I try to bring myself, but take myself, right? I think that's important because my goal is to empower people to be their best kind of sovereign selves, right? And not to impress myself on them too much. So that's where I'm like, no, I'm bringing my best self, but I'm also taking my best self back with me again. That said, though, the process of some of these experiences in my life that I consider initiatory, such as having cancer, required huge sacrifices from me. In some cases, literal parts of myself, right? I had a tumor removed. So like, that's a sacrifice. I had lymph nodes removed. Those are sacrifices. Those are things I'm leaving behind as part of the new insight and healing that I received. So that's really good. Now, in terms of cleansing before readings, this is actually a really good question because it is useful to have sort of a small ritual. When I lay cards, I do a small ritual around it. That said, if it takes an hour, it's way too long because I'm busy. So I have a short, so like I have the house is protected and I have a short opening rite that calls on kind of my spirit posse to watch over the reading. And then I ask my grandmother specifically for help because she read Tarochi I never met her. She died when my mother was only 18, but it turned out she read Tarochi and she read for my mother, which is fascinating. So I call on her for help, right? And truthful readings. And I do it in German because she was German. And then, so I open up kind of that pathway to getting the insight. And then when I'm done, I close stuff kind of back down again. And I have a very simple rite that I use for that. So.
Excellent.
Nice question, Shadow Max.
Yeah, really cool question.
What is Tarochi?
Tarochi is the actual game that the original Tarot deck came out of.
Okay.
So it's a deck of cards that's like a regular card deck, but then it has more trumps.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an actual, there's sort of a game you can play with it. But like that's what she used for. There was no Rider Waite back in the day, like her.
Yeah.
Myth weight, I should say. Credit where credit is due, Pamela. But yeah, there was not that kind of deck back then. So people would read off of kind of basically what were card decks with more trumps, and Tarochi was one of the kind of those decks. Yeah.
Cool. I never heard of that one. Yeah, I knew that people would read from playing cards, but I didn't know there was another variation of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. And how interesting that your grandma did it and you never even got to meet her. And then here you are.
I never even knew until I had already been reading for a decade or more. And I brought my cards home to visit. My mom was like, your grandmother did that. And I'm like, no way. That's Ooh, that's awesome. So
cool.
Yeah, sometimes you wonder about the whole memory and the DNA thing. You know?
Yeah. Or to it.
Maybe the cards are just in my blood, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, those things, tend to pop up. I mean, so many of our guests have those occurrences where they find out later that there was someone in their family, or they were, a lot of them are coming from, families where those things were a tradition. In all kinds of different circumstances that are all kind of wonderful to hear those stories. So excellent. All right. Just to make a note, if you want to check out some of the things that we've talked about tonight, all those links are listed at the top of chat, and you can find them listed down below, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast later. And that's circlethrice.com, THRICE, circlethrice.com. You can find the Cancer Grimoire. You can find all the different things that we've talked about tonight. So make sure.
She said there's a lot of free things to check out on her site. So
Keisha asked a really powerful, good question, which was, do I teach classes or have things coming up? Why, thank you for asking.
Have you been project planning?
Hey, yes. In addition to direct one-on-one consulting, which I do with kind of my consultant clients, and the membership, which is for the planner and some free courses and stuff I also have a series of classes that I'm doing this year. I've been rolling them out live as kind of like my first time live. This is stuff I take my private clients through, but now I'm doing them in a group format. And I'm going to continue doing those. I have one on setting smart magic goals. I have one on cycle mapping, which is kind of an agile cyclical methodology for project planning, right? So it's for high chaos environments, and it keeps you on track and moving. And then the one I'm working on now that is not out yet, but will be out this fall, is a magical habits course. So yeah, I've had this is the course I've been putting off for longer, just in case you think I never procrastinate. No, this was something that I had wanted to do kind of before I got cancer, and then I just kept like cancer and COVID, and I was like, oh, it'll happen next year. It's about using enchantment to help you form better habits, because I think that if you can actually form good habits, that's like a game changer for like changing your whole life. Right? If you could be the kind of person who decides to do X every day, and then you do that, like that's just stunning. And I'm not like naturally gifted at this. Like I've really had to learn and figure out the tricks that work for me to get me keeping those good habits. And so I'm working on that course now, and I'm really excited because I actually am partnering with this a friend of mine named Danny Nemu, who's a really powerful hypnotherapist. I'm hoping he'll be able to contribute to the class in some way, because that's incredible overlap of kind of skills for creating good habits. So that's what I'm working on.
A lot of awesome stuff. Rossi, you should look into that. You should look into that magical habits. I think that might be good for you.
Yeah, because I mean that's the hard thing. Like living in the modern world, we have all this stuff, and everyone's busy, and sometimes, creating new habits is difficult. So yeah, that could be a good class for a lot of different people. I would think. I
think we all should. Can we adopt you? Can we adopt
you? You can absolutely adopt me. Come over to my site and check out all the stuff.
Yes.
How's that for like I got some marketing in there. Moving aside, I love to do this work, and I've had such a fun time chatting with you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on here. Everybody's super psyched about all of the things that you're doing, and I think you got a lot of us thinking a little, because everybody in this chat is of the woo-woo persuasion. So we I think you got all of us thinking a little bit differently about how we need to be integrating it in different places perhaps we were not thinking about before.
Well, I'm really glad. That makes me super happy, and you guys have been wonderful. So I've never done a live one before, so I admit I was a little nervous.
But you did absolutely fine.
It was a great time. Thank you guys so much.
Well, excellent.
We all fell in love with the word enchantment tonight. Yes.
Yes, everyone's gonna be talking about the enchantment's going to be the new word in the streams here.
Yes.
If we have a Team Weird Con, we should have Ivy. Yes. So one day the Team Weird Con can come to fruition. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on, Ivy. We really appreciate it. We are going to have,
and thanks to Rodave 3, who I don't think is here tonight. Rodave 3 is the person who suggested that we have you on. So Rodave, I know you'll be listening at some point. Thank you for the suggestion to have Ivy on. She was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, whoever you are, Mr.
All those mysterious internet names.
I'm sure I know them. I'm sure they're.
You probably know. Yeah.
I probably know exactly who they are.
And their actual name or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So for all of you listening out there at another time and another place, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. Take care, and we will see you next time. And for everyone else who's sticking around and hanging out in chat, we're going to go see who we can go raid this evening.
Let's see. I got BMO, the Bliss Witch, Weird Paul, Mystic Village.
Mystic Village.
And Scorpy.
We raided Scorpy last time. We have Grumster's one doing marbles.
I don't know who that is.
Hello, Black Sheep Meat. How are you doing? Welcome in. Welcome in. Does anybody have any recommendations for a raid tonight?
Well, since we were talking about witchy stuff and tarot, maybe we should go raid BMO, the Bliss Witch. It's a new friend.
Okay.
So it's BMO, the Bliss Witch.
Okay.
She's a nice lady.
Excellent. Sounds wonderful. I do want to give some thank yous. Journey of Self Discovery reached a 3-stream streak. Thank you so much, Journey of Self Discovery. We had a 1-screen celebration. So all those let's goes that popped up from Keisha. Thank you so much, Keisha. And we had a whole bunch of subs at the beginning of the stream coming from Keisha. Thank you, Keisha. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We'll be back. You will be back tomorrow. We got to do the Friday night stream. So get ready for your readings and medium readings and all that. And as of right now, I will update Discord this weekend. But my plan is to come on Sunday and start doing a little mortuary assistant to pay off the...
Yeah, he's going to be playing that horror game you guys wanted him to play.
So come keep me company because I'm not good at doing those alone. I won't. I remember I'm the guy who hides in the van. So
at least watch, then you can laugh at him when he gets scared. Yeah.
I owe the drag too, Keisha. Hopefully I'll be able to combine those together over those couple of streams it'll take me to get through that game. So that's the plan moving forward. Thank you all for joining us. Take care. We're headed out. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you all later.
Bye. Bye.
And there we go. And